confidence to go out and get any job you want and walk in with an attitude that you are educated on your own initiative. And so go to Coursera, you can learn for free. And really on YouTube, if you go in and put in anything, quantum mechanics or electronics or a certain SQL programming or COBOL program, whatever you want to put in, there'll be courses. And these are free. Stanford University, University of Michigan, Colorado, Yale University, Rice University. And I went to a lot of these. I took a lot of these courses. That's why they send me all things that I was interested in. And they'll do the same thing for you. And then you can actually write papers and put them up on academia.edu. You don't have to pay for any of this. Nothing, zero. Now, what you're going to learn up here will not necessarily be true. Like when you say understanding Einstein, that's not going to work. Anyway, I am going to show you, but here's the key. If you don't understand what they're saying, you have no right to speak against them. Capiche? You have no right to speak, no right to raise your voice against someone that has done research and has done work. And he's done it. Einstein, I'm not saying he didn't do it, he just didn't get it right. And I'm going to show you he didn't get it right, because I'm going to show you light accelerated. I'm going to show you light as a particle. I'm going to show you light can do all kinds of things that they had no clue about. And based on Einstein, the universe is static. Light goes the same speed everywhere. And then they had to decide, okay, that's why the Big Bang is everything's going away. That's why light's slowing down or turning red, which means it's slowing down. And just everything's going away from everything else, just completely away. Obviously, it's slowing down from every direction. I mean, it's just insanity to think of the things that they have to do to jump through the hoops that Einstein set. So we're going to blow all that away, and then we're going to. You already know about geology is not correct. I'm going to show you that the things that they thought about the nuclear physics is not correct. They understand a lot. But there's a lot you can step up and say, I understand these basic principles now. Now I am educated enough where I can work for you. And if you direct me in the specifics of this job, I will do a good job for you. You don't have to pay me the kind of money you're going to pay somebody that went to Yale or Harvard or whatever. Or anywhere, really. Because right now it's like $393 a month, something like that. The average college student pays for their loans. I mean, that's insanity. And they're not getting the jobs they thought they were going to get. But you can get your confidence. Get the courses. You have to do this. They went to school. They paid. They invested. These kids were, they really went and did their work. And if you don't do your work, you're not entitled to get the job. But you can get it for free. All right, so this you have to do your work. You can't just walk in there and say, well, I just want a good job. No, absolutely not. Never said that, never will say that. But you don't have to pay somebody to tell you what to say. And that's what it is now. The schools now, a lot of them, as I'm going to show you, what you're going to see here about Einstein, that's not right. And everything that they're teaching now, literally, for geology, archaeology, history, light, energy, nuclear physics, history of our ancient ways, or ancient giants and creatures and all that stuff now has been proven to be true. So what you're going to learn in college is that this is what they say you have to say to get your degree, and it's not going to be correct. And they're not looking at the evidence, which they should be looking at. It's a little disturbing. So follow me through on this, and you will be just as qualified and likely more qualified for any position that anybody else is going to apply for if you do your own work. All right, because they're going to be coming at it from a wrong attitude. I absolutely guarantee you, if they're listening to their professors, they have started off, well, let's find out what they did start off with. Okay, you're going to have the confidence because they weren't right. They didn't get it right. Listen.
Because when we've analysed more data, this difference between muons and electrons stays, and lepton universality seems to be violated, well, What that means is that there's something wrong with the standard model. We found the crack, finally, in our understanding of particle physics. There's absolutely no way that we can explain this observation with our current understanding.
All right, and the reason they are saying this, I'm going to tell you right now, I believe it, is because we actually showed the particles that they are speaking about. This also, same thing, this is about 6 months ago. The new boson appears in nuclear decay. We were working with nuclear, we were working with light. They are crushing these particles together at such extreme speeds that everything explodes into the light bits and particles and nuclear decay and all kinds of different chunks of matter. But they're looking for the tiniest bits of pieces that they have never been able to see before, which we started out with light, so we had no problem seeing them. Now, but anyway, the bottom line is the new boson appears, and that breaks the standard model. And here is the new boson. All right, light waves, but they're not waves, they're particles, but they control huge regions. They flow through the air. Now we're going through a Venturi. That is acceleration. And that shows that the light is a particle and it is accelerating out of its wave, and then it concusses at the Venturi. When it does that, it displays itself as the particle, and it's up back-to-back dipoles. The white part is the explosive part, the black part is the boson that they are talking about right now. Now you saw the light accelerate. You saw that it was a box of particles, white and black up and down. You see the black balls? You see them? See them? You see the white? There's no black in here whatsoever. That was a box of black and white particles. The black ones roll away. That is the bosons. And they just cuddle right up to each other. They can snuggle right up and touch each other, have no problem. The white ones want to explode, just get away from us, get away. And when they did that, in order to come through the Venturi, they had to separate from the black, which is the bosons. Now, at this point, there is some discussion whether this could be the dark matter that they are talking about, because they did obviously separate. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing but white here, which is a separation from the black balls. Now, there the same number of black balls out here as there is white here, but the white is now glowiness, and then they'll come back to the exact same balls? I don't think so. So for me now, because this is the difference that they're talking about, lepton universality, less of this than there is of that, or vice versa. And that could very well be. But they can figure out this much easier working with light than working with the nucleus. They're just using too much splatter to get to where we are. We started right at light. So all we did was break the light into little bitty pieces. So, and a nucleus in electron flood theory is nothing more than this right here, which is nothing more than light particles, which really are, photons, but they can be broken up into electrons. Anyway, that's what a nucleus looks like in electron flood theory, just a ton of electrons together. The positive portion of the electrons, which is the black boson part, they can just lay right on top of each other. So that allows you to make some very elegant patterns. And they happen because of resonance frequencies, and they lock in at 1,000 hertz, 2,000 hertz, 3,000 hertz, and every one of those is one of those molecules, atoms, and they become pretty well stable. And you can see it with salt experiments and all that. So I want you to feel confident and be able to go out and speak and not feel like you have no abilities. Because the ones right now that had the abilities have to reconsider. I know they know a lot of stuff. They know how atoms bond together and how molecules create different chemicals and all that business. Yes, absolutely, I agree with that 100%. However, once you go back in and you take a whole new approach to these molecules. You say that's not a proton in it, that's not a neutron. It's 1837 electrons makes a proton, 1838 makes a neutron. And when you start adding up here, you got hundreds of thousands of particles in here, because not only does it go from one proton to the next, they throw in a bunch of neutrons to balance things out. Because nothing works here. Nothing works at all. There's zones of stability, yes. And then both sides of them, there's unstable and stable isotopes. And there's a zillion of them on both sides. And that's because you don't have exactly the right number of electrons in the core. You have a little less, a little more. Yeah, that'll hold up for a little while, but it won't stay that way. So another one will move in or one will move out. And they understand that, but they can't account for it with proton and neutron theory. It just doesn't work. But it's just been dismissed. Now, this works, and this is electron flood theory. It's what it is, and it's time to start looking into it. Otherwise, it's one of these circular things. You just keep walking around in circles and hoping that the circle is going to turn into a straight line. It never does. Okay, let's talk about this now. You've always heard about Newton, and he's talking about Newton's laws and inertia and all that business, and the gravity and the apple falling on his head. Well, let's look at what he has to say. And now let's analyze what was said and what we think. Now, in every material universe, it means there's matter. It's not just a thought realm. Right? Everywhere where there's matter, the motion of a particle in a preferential reference frame. That means you decide the medium that it's in. Well, they decided it was in nothing. All right? So that's their preferential reference frame, is a medium of nothing. It's determined by the action of forces whose total vanished for all times when and only when the velocity of the particle is constant in that nothingness, because they say that everything consists of nothing out there. So, and if they were right, this would be correct, but it's not correct because they were not right. So that is that a particle initially at rest or in uniform motion in this preferential frame of nothingness continues in that state unless compelled by forces to change it. Well, guess what? The medium that any particle is moving through is not empty. So those are the compelling forces. This is really literally nonsense. Everything is based on assumptions that were not correct. The universe is loaded with particles. Now, let's look up, let's go with his second law, and let's look up his laws. They're not too, there's not a whole lot to look at. Let's start from the top. All right, so these are Newton's laws. Very, very simple. You can pick these up in a matter of a couple of minutes. Every body there is, everything that there is, persists in its state of being at rest or of moving uniformly straight forward, except insofar as it is compelled to change its state by forces impressed on it. Absolutely. A particle going through the air, it's being pushed by the air, it's being pulled by gravity. If it was spinning, it's also interacting that way. So these are the forces impressed upon it. Right? Otherwise, if it was in a nothing state, which is what they are talking about in outer space, it'd just go forever. You know, it would just keep going forever. And I don't disagree with that. Something has to push against it. What pushes against it? Other molecules. Other molecules are other particles. Particles are light. I work in the light realm. Now, law 2. So we understand the first law is that there has to be some particles in the air. And they are. Light is particles. Now, so law 2. The alteration of motion, so it has to change its motion, is ever proportional to the force impressed on it. Yes, absolutely. You push it real hard that way, it's going to go that way. And it is made in the direction of the right line in which that force is impressed. Obviously, you push it that way, it goes that way. Harder you push it, the more it goes. Now, law 3. To every action, there is always opposed an equal reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yes. Now, the mutual actions of two bodies upon each other are always equal and directed to contrary parts. Well, that is a sort of a hard one to fully grasp. Whenever two items hit together, if they hit dead on, the forces are equal and opposite to each other and equal to the mass of each one. So if this one hits real hard, and it hits weighing 20 pounds and going 100 miles an hour, and this one's only going 3 miles an hour and weighs 5 pounds, obviously this one's going to go flying. So it's equal and opposite. And then there's, if you hit it on a glance, it's equal and opposite, yes. But it's because of the surrounding, here we are here. It's because of the particles that's surrounding that are getting smashed. And then they're pushing back in their regions, like two balls pushing against each other. So that's all he's talking about, Newton's first law, and they make it all into a bunch of different this and that, but we understand that you just keep going in the same, unless something acts on it, and what we haven't acting on it that they don't understand is the ether in spaces, which is the particles, which is the photons, which is the electrons, which is the solar wind, and all that's dust and particles that are in the space. Anything that goes through there is being affected by their magnetic regions that surround the particle, and there's huge magnetic regions that surround every little particle. And they just did a thing on the universe. I'll show you what that looks like. It looks like a giant molecule. That's what the universe looks like. That's what they just put out. 3D, first time 3D ever seen. These, I believe, are galaxies, and they overlap their regions of influence, just like I said. Now, they appear to be locked in with each other, just exactly how I would anticipate electron flood theory working, exactly identical. And that's the universe. So, as above, so below. Now, don't let them intimidate you by saying they're educated, they know all this stuff. Have them explain this in their geology. Who made these tank tracks? That was made thousands of years ago. They cut slabs from here and made walls in the back. And that machine was used in many different places. And this is a tendon, and I'll show you what they did with them. All right, the tendon tracks were up there. They cut these slabs and they moved them back here, and they made these walls. That's why these walls fit together so well. And this was a bone that see, this is right here, and this is expanded. That piece was kind of bad, but they used it, and it still worked because this is the structural support. Now, this particular, they look like they use scraps or whatever, but you see, this one's really bad too. Now, these are biological. This is tendinous material and muscly, and that is bone, and the blood running out of the bone. See, that's the curve of the bone. Obviously, in geology, we would like your geologist professors to explain the giant fish that's in the desert over here in, I think it's Mauritania. Well, this is Mauritania right here, which I believe is Atlantis. I've looked at it very carefully, and I would say that it is Atlantis, and the Sahara Ocean drained right across there, just like Plato said it did, as it collapsed. And you can see the collapse over here right at the end of the straits. And you say, "Oh, Roger, what straits are you talking about?" And I say, "Ooh, this is the straits I'm talking about," which is exactly what Plato said. Atlantis was outside the straits. And that's the straits to me. And this collapsed right here and ran out. Now, that's the giant fish. And this is a giant dragon right up here that runs the entire length all the way over to there. That's its tail. That's the legs. I've looked at this in extreme detail, and it was attacking that fish. And this is what it was spitting out of its dragon throat. This is the dragon's throat, runs all the way down. This is effluence running off of a dead, decaying creature. This is what came out of the dragon's throat and went down below to attack the fish. And it is some nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. See this? That came down out of that dragon, straight down here. See it? That's the fish's fin, and that's the vital flesh of the fish's back, which has been damaged. Let's go with that. Now, you have Google Earth. Look at it. You can see, and it goes all the way from, goes all the way down the throat, all the way over to here. The tail, it still has the dragon scales way down here. You can see quite easily. See? All right, these are all dragon scales. See that? And it runs all the way up to his well, to his whole body. All right, so now we're up right where his head is. So there's the head. All right, and there's the neck. These are all dragon scales down here. That is the throat. And if you look at any of the Chinese dragons, they have all that little fluffy, fluty looking stuff that goes down the side of their heads. And this is obviously where he spit the stuff out. And I have actually found the injectors that are in the throat, these green and red injectors. See them here? I believe this is where the toxic mix gets made, in here somewhere. And that comes out of the throat. And this is the throat. And it runs right down, all the way down. Now, this is underneath his chin, and these are the scales of his throat. And that's the inside of the throat. And these are the scales of the throat. All right. Now, if you don't see dragon scales there, it's just not like, I mean, just pay a little attention to it, look at it, and think about it when you go. Now, the real killer here is, how did this thing die? And it appears that there's a gash across its throat right here. And it's bled out into the desert right there. Now, there is some ancient text about that, and there is actually a coin, a gold coin that shows a dragonish creature. It actually has a human-looking face on it, but it's a dragon attacking a fish. Now, there's just too much. And then the ancient maps. Some people have been sending me maps that show all these things. They're on the maps. They knew these things were here. Absolutely amazing what has been just discarded and destroyed and overlooked and forced underground. Now they're starting to look at all these old texts with new eyes. I hope they're looking at them with new eyes. I am.